Hello, potential solar power plant buyers. My name is Adam Pizzo, and I want you to go solar your way. I'm going to warn you in advance that this video is long. It's my very first video. However, it is your one-stop shop to make sure that you know how to vet any potential solar installer quotes, and so that you can pick the exact components of your system so it works the way you want it to, and most importantly, so that you do not get tricked into buying a system that's too expensive to pay for itself and that doesn't do exactly what you need or want it to do. That is the most important part about putting solar on your home. All right, outside of that, if for some reason you don't want to watch the whole video because it is too long and you'd rather just ask me questions, I'm promising you that I can answer those questions for you, will answer those questions for you, or I'll even tell you exactly what minute to tune into to make sure that you get to the right part of the video, because I'm literally going to show you everything you need to see to understand what they're going to put on your home, whether it's attractive or not, whether you want to pick an option that is more attractive. So it's not just about saving money, it's also going to be about exactly what you want to have installed on your most precious object, your home. All right, so some quick ground rules and expectations. This video explains residential solar systems from a purely financial perspective. So nothing about commercial solar systems, just residential ones. You will not hear anything in this video about saving the environment or tree hugging. This is because solar makes perfect financial sense for many, many, many homeowners out there. And I want to draw attention to that fact. The next thing is, if you are a homeowner and you are quote unquote renting or paying an electric utility for your electricity, then you could benefit by gaining your own energy independence. So I am going to talk a little bit about why you should be energy independent in this video. All right, again, my name is Adam Pizzo, and these are my credentials. First and foremost, I'm a homeowner. Second, over the past 6 years, I've owned two rooftop solar systems. So I'm really going to speak to my experience on owning these two systems and going through the process of going through quotes from all the solar installers. I have enough residential electrical knowledge to have worked on my own DIY projects, and I've proven that I can at least pass an inspection when it comes to doing my own DIY work. So I know a little bit about that. Again, I'm an advocate of energy independence. And last, I am CFO of a family of 5. My kids would always jest that my wife and their mother holds the CEO title. All right, so over the past 6 years, friends and neighbors would look up at my roof and ask me if buying a solar system was worth it. So, who is solar worth it for? First and foremost, homeowners who have a roof that gets sunlight all day, or who have a large section of their roof that gets sun all day. Next, homeowners that don't plan on moving anytime in the next 15 years. While I was able to pull this off, I would not recommend it. It got a little dicey trying to sell that first house with solar. The big thing is that the banks that finance the solar loans are always worried about the credit worthiness of the next buyer of the house. So we had to go through a whole thing where they had to prove that they were credit worthy in order to assume my terms of the system, and that was the only way that they could do it. But I can tell you right now that the verbiage from my current loan on this home does not allow transfers of the loan to anyone else. So you really need to stay put for 15 years to make this work for you. Next, homeowners that do not want to pay the ever increasing cost of electricity. So back in 2016, I had to give my installer an electric bill. I saved that bill. I had to like photocopy it. It's uploaded on a computer, and I was paying 16 cents a kilowatt hour. In 2022, I had to again provide an installer with my electric bill, and I was paying 20 cents a kilowatt hour. So just to give you an idea, my energy usage last year was over 16,000 kilowatt hours. So you might have guessed that there's a really, really big price difference between paying 16 cents a kilowatt hour and 20 cents a kilowatt hour. So the reason why this is so significant is that was just 6 years. The electric companies used to let you see 2, 3, 4 years of your continuous billing. But now they only show you one solitary calendar year because electricity continues to go up. It's going up faster than it's ever gone up before. And that's their way of hiding it. If not, they'd have even more unhappy customers calling every day. All right, the last thing is homeowners who want the security and independence of not needing the electric grid when it fails, or simply the option to use it when it's convenient for them. So there's a little more there, but basically the old solar systems, the one I had in 2016, did not allow me to use power when the electricity or the power grid was out. So if there's a power outage, so was I. So basically now you have the ability to use your solar system if there's a power outage. And that's a pretty big deal for some of us buyers that had a generator going into things because they were too afraid or they got caught up losing too much food in a power outage when they had no refrigeration. So now, especially as of 2021, those options are available to you. And yes, you can now integrate that generator you had before into these systems and use them all in unison. It's pretty special, it's pretty neat, and it's really cutting edge. All right, but for some reason I found that one thing hasn't changed over the past 6 years. For every happy solar system owner out there, there's just as many owners that are unhappy. So why are these owners so unhappy? It's usually for one of two reasons. One, they're stuck with a system that doesn't pay for itself because an installer took advantage of their lack of understanding about the system they sold them, and or their loan is too big because their installer used creative financing that had to hide extra profit in a payment that looked reasonable in the beginning of the loan but cost more once the incentives were done at the end of that loan. So this is an issue. It is still an issue today, and it's what's giving solar a bad rap. That hopefully will change once more and more people see this video. I don't know why there's not more videos like the one I'm making right now. Because if you think about it, if it's one thing to convince new customers to buy solar, right? So there's a bunch of reasons out there, a bunch of myths floating around that definitely prevent new homeowners or homeowners that were considering solar from going solar in the first place. So that's half the story. The other half of the story is these unhappy customers spreading how unhappy they are because some installer did them wrong in the past. All right, so to best understand how you can avoid the installers that make all of these unhappy solar system owners, I will combat their solar myths head on. Solar myths are intentionally vague messages that their advertisements spew through the following media. So first, there's the incessant internet ads and videos. So right up there, I wouldn't be surprised if right before you watched my video, you saw a really, really vague video on solar. It was definitely produced by some installer or some co-op of installers, and it made lots and lots of intentionally vague promises. Having filled out a few surveys, having filled out some information to get information on solar, they got my email, they got my phone number, which leads me to the next thing. Cold calls from both US-based and non-US-based call centers. So sometimes you'd have a very friendly US-based person that would like to give you some information, or more importantly, would like to get you connected with an installer. And sometimes they're non-US based call centers, and they'll talk to you. If you say you're interested, they'll transfer you back to the US. They're pretty annoying phone calls, and they take up a lot of your time. And sometimes when they go to connect you, they drop the call. Fantastic experience. Last thing is knocking on your door, telling you that they will give you a discount because they were already in the neighborhood on a system. It's like, hey, I'm working on so-and-so's neighbor's house. You might know them. If you act right now, we will cut the labor cost and throw a system up on your house for way less than it would cost if I called you to come out, if you called me to come out here again. That's really not true. So there are a lot of steps involved with getting a solar system approved for your home. Why? Because you are registering as a power plant with your state. So I don't want to belittle this in any way, shape, or form. When you are done having a solar system installed on your roof, even if it's not on your roof and it's some array on the ground or something like that, you are now a power plant. And the state's going to make a big deal out of that because you help them with their green energy or renewable energy quotas. So it takes a while to get all of this stuff through. You want your installer to take a long time or a good amount of time examining your roof, examining all of your electricity needs before they design a system. Throwing one up there on your roof as fast as possible and then kind of working backwards from there is going to ultimately hurt you. So please don't accept that offer to install a solar system on your roof because they have extra panels in stock or they have extra equipment in stock and they're in the area. You know what? It might be cheaper, but in the end, it's not going to work the way it's intended to, and you're not going to get any choices in the components. All right. And finally, I want to teach you how to spot the installer behaviors and quotes that are red flags that show that they do not have your best interest in mind. So there are definitely a few things I can teach you or show you that some installers use or tactics that they use to hide profit that they'd like to make. All right. First and foremost, the solar myths. Number one, the federal government or your state is going to put solar panels on your home for free. So I bet that video you saw before mine said this. The federal government is not going to put anything on your roof for free. The only power they have under current legislative laws is to give you an income tax return. That is 30% of the system that you chose to put on your house. Again, in the year after you install your system, you can receive a 30% federal income tax return that will pay for 30% of your system. This was not true as of a few months ago. It was actually 26%. Interestingly enough, back in 2016, it was also 30%. What was supposed to happen is it was 26% this year. And then the following year, I think it went down to 21 or 22%, and then it was going to disappear altogether. But there was a little bit of a partisan change, and the bill got put through that extended the 30%, increased the 30%, and extended that indefinitely. Now, there could just as easily be another partisan change that does not allow that 30%. So while it is currently indefinite, that could change next year, a year from now. So there is some urgency to get that 30%, but they're not going to pay to install solar panels on your roof for free. All right, number two, the federal government or your state is going to pay you to put solar panels on your home. So I'm going to say that there is some truth to this myth, definitely not on the federal level, as I've explained, but on the state level, there are lots of state incentives. But I think most people think that this statement means that not only are they going to put the solar panels on your roof for free, they're also going to pay you after they're installed. So not only are you going to get free solar panels, they're going to continue to give you cash payments just for taking advantage of going solar and the opportunity. So I will come back to this myth, but they're not going to put solar panels on your roof for free, federal government or state government. The payments we'll talk about after you've paid to install the system and you have a loan. Myth number three, the sun doesn't shine at night when it's raining, snowing, or just plain cloudy. So there's no way solar panels are going to be able to make all of my electricity. While it is 100% true that the sun doesn't shine at night, we all know that, and that your solar panels will make zero electricity at night. And it's also true that your solar panels will not produce as much electricity when it's raining, snowing, or just plain cloudy. What this statement fails to tell you is that in just 5 hours in the state of New Jersey, or at least everything on this latitude, you will get enough sunlight to make all the electricity you need to make for your home for both the nighttime and the daytime. So you're going to make all that electricity in just 5 hours. So it doesn't matter that it gets dark every night. So I guess it could matter that you're not going to make enough electricity on cloudy days or stuff like that, but that also doesn't take into account that there are more than enough sunny days in 1 year to generate all the electricity you need over that year. And thankfully, your utility grid supplier, your electric supplier, uses your credits in that way. In other words, when you make electricity, you make more electricity than you need to make during those 5 hours a day in the state of New Jersey. What ends up happening is your meter, quote unquote, spins backwards. So it doesn't really spin backwards. They put a new meter on your house when you go solar. And this meter allows you to prove how much solar power, extra solar power, you produced during that daytime. The good part about that is the meter's on your house and you can visualize it whenever you want. You don't have to take the electric company's word for it, because what the electric company does is they register that extra power as credits that you can use that very night. In fact, you can use them for an entire calendar year. So don't worry about the rainy days. Don't worry about the cloudy days. It's not a big deal because there's more than enough sunny days every year. And if your system is sized appropriately, like we talked about, then there is no fear when it rains, when it's snowy, or any of those things, because you have the full year to make all the electricity that you need to make with your solar system and use those credits from your power company. Myth number 4, my friend or neighbor told me you can't use the electricity from your solar panels when the power goes out. Why would I pay to put a solar power plant on my roof if I can't use it when the utility lines are down? I completely get this. 2016, I was with these people, but I still decided to go solar simply because my installer was upfront with me. He's like, look, the way this thing's connected, the way the state of New Jersey wants you to connect the solar system to the utility grid for the safety of the utility workers, and so that, well, you can't go off grid at the time, is that you will not have electricity when the power's out. So he helped me. In the price of the new solar system, where I still got to subtract that 30% from my income tax return, he added an automatic transfer switch, and I got a new utility panel, a new electric panel for my home. And as part of that, I was able to connect a generator to my home when the power was out. And man, I needed it. So unfortunately, I had power outages 1.8 miles from where I currently live of 16 hours plus with certain storms. So it was a really big deal to me, especially going through that experience and losing refrigerator full after refrigerator full of food, that I have power no matter what, especially with 3 kids. This was absolutely true in 2016. It was the only way to do this unless you put in a battery storage system with that automatic transfer switch. So I'm happy to say that in 2021, just last year, that changed. So you can absolutely pick the correct components and have power from your rooftop solar system without a battery system. And you can actually use that power only when the sun is up to power your home during an outage. Obviously, you can also combine a battery, and now you can also combine a generator if you already have one like me with that. So on to myth number 5. Perhaps the most important one: solar panels take forever to pay for themselves, and it's going to be years before I start saving money. This is not true in the slightest. A correctly designed solar system, like the ones I'm going to show you, is going to save you money, not in a few years, not decades from now, but it's going to start saving you money the very second you turn it on. And that first month, if it's not in the middle of a billing cycle, the very first full month that you own the system, you will be able to make all of your own electricity for the first time, and from there on out, since it's on. So the end result of that is actually kind of simple. You are not going to have an electric bill. Case in point, if you added up all the electricity I use over the year, and multiplied it by the kilowatt hour charge, then you divided all of that money over 12 months, I would have a bill of $250 every month. So as long as the solar system that was designed for me had a loan payment and a subsidy that equaled less than $250, I was going to save money. And that happens from the very first month you own the system. So there is no waiting years. It happens as soon as you go solar, and that's the good part about it with a properly sized system. All right. So we talked about the myths that are out there, the myths that I really do feel the installers are spreading more than anything. But again, it's not every installer, and there's some good installers out there. So here's how to find the bad ones. All right. Red flags that an installer doesn't have your best interest in mind. All right. So if you find an installer that's trying to trade off of one of their big commercial projects that you know and you've seen, especially if they use this as a reason that they cost more than other installers because they do better or premium work, then that is an issue. And the reason it's an issue is because you can go look around, at least I can go look around me, and I can see that almost every gas station has solar panels on top of their gas pumps. I can look at some stadiums around me, and they have solar power all over them. I go to the train station, and I can park under covered parking. And the reason that covered parking exists is because, well, there's solar panels on top of all those covers. And I don't know about you, but I don't like standing out in the rain. I don't want to clean snow off my car. So when I use the train, it's great to have that available to me. So yes, there's some name recognition when you point to a project like that people are happy about, but that's a commercial project. It generates a lot more profit, and these big companies are going to lend all of their advertising to these bigger accounts that are commercial. So if they're going to offer you something, you can almost bet it's going to cost a little bit more than everybody else, and they're kind of telling you that. There's a few ways they do that. The next thing is, these companies will offer their own solar production warranty or guarantee. What that means is that every year you're supposed to make a certain amount of electricity from your solar panels. That would be your total production for that year. And what they're saying is they're going to offer you a guarantee that even if your system doesn't make all the power it's supposed to, they're going to kick in the cash to make sure that you don't have a bill regardless. So that would be great if it were necessary, and it's not. And here's why. The first thing that this installer is going to do if your system doesn't make what it's supposed to is it's going to file a warranty claim. So every major solar panel producer out there, even the ones I had back in 2016, offers a 25-year manufacturer's warranty on production. So that would be materials of production, but also on the actual production of that solar production of the panel itself and how much electricity it should be producing. So there's the first reason you don't need to have some insurance policy that your system's not going to make enough. If it's sized right, then it's going to make enough electricity. The next thing is they're going to do something to kind of stack things in their favor, and it's a win-win for them, and this is why I don't want you to play into it. So one way to ensure that their system or the system they're installing on your house is going to make enough electricity is to make you buy more solar panels than you need. So they do this in a couple ways, but let's see. You buy more stuff from them, and that hedges their bet to make sure that they never have to pay you out on the warranty they're selling you, which is why you're paying an inflated price. Just to give you a hint, the first price I got from a company like that was $90,000 for a system. That is almost $40,000 more than I paid. So just to let you know that inflated price makes no sense, and they're getting you on both ends on that one. All right. Companies that offer financing with a term that goes beyond 15 years. So I'm going to go back to the rule number 2, or at least myth number 2. The federal government or your state is going to pay you to put solar panels on your home. So the state is going to pay you, again, after you take out a loan and install solar panels on your home. And they're going to pay you for a very specific amount of time. That time frame is guaranteed. The payments from the state are going to come not yearly, not quarterly, but every single month to help you subsidize your payment. So when you see a 15-year payment plan or less, then you can be comfortable knowing that that payment will be subsidized every month by payments from the state. Why are they paying you? Because you are helping the state or the electric company that you're electric grid that you're tied to, the company you're tied to, make their share of green or renewable energy. And there are penalties if they don't meet their quota. So instead of paying a higher price for the penalties, they pay you instead for producing that green power for them. And as long as you're connected to their grid, they can say that you produced it. So I'll give you my scenario. My solar loan for my system that cost me $56,500 is $339 for over 15 years per month. $339 a month for 15 years. The state, based off the size of my system and the production it makes, has given me a guaranteed $150 a month plus every single month for just being tied to the grid and for the size of my system. The end result is, I told you before, my bill's $250 a month, or was $250 a month to buy electricity from the supplier. I am paying $61 less a month than I was paying prior to installing solar, even though I have all of the benefits that I currently have with this system. So the state will absolutely pay you to produce power, and they will pay you monthly. So there is some truth to this myth. I just don't want it to be misconstrued. Back to where we were. All right. So the next thing is, the quote shows you a monthly payment or monthly savings and not the total cost of the system. Well, this is where they'll try to stretch that term greater than 15 years and give you that unsubsidized loan for 5 or 10 years, potentially even longer. They know that the solar panels are going to still make 60% of their electricity that they were making when they were brand new at 30 years from now. It's been tested, and that's actually what happens. So they can guarantee that, and they guarantee that for 25, not 30 years, but we know they can make it for longer. So if they're showing you monthly payments and they're not showing you the total cost of the system, then it's easy for them to give you a longer term, show you a more attractive payment, and not let you know exactly what you're paying. And longer terms come with higher interest. My interest rate is 5.24% on my system. I have a 0% interest loan, so that I have time for my tax return to come back to me so that I can take that off the size of the loan so I can continue to pay my $339 a month. But that is how that's set up. But I know what my term is, and if you are not looking at the term and you're looking at the payment, you could have an unsubsidized payment. So pay the $339 instead of paying $150 less a month than that with the subsidy, if you go with a lower payment and a longer term. So make sure they're not just showing you payments. Please just don't accept a payment. You have to compare the full price of the system. All right. Another thing that they'll do is they'll show you a quote without the exact components you're paying for. So one of the ways that they do this is that they will show you a yearly production or an anticipated yearly production. Since I've been through 3 quotes with the first system and at least 6 with the second system, I can tell you that I've had the same systems advertise more or less production with the same components. But on the same note, I've seen smaller systems with the same components but less panels also advertise that they're going to produce as much as another system that has more panels. There's something fishy there. And of course, the payment's going to be less if they're selling you more panels, but is it actually going to make the yearly production? So the best thing to do to insulate yourself from this is to make sure that you find enough quotes that make sense with enough panels. Why is this okay? Most panels right now are producing about 400 watts.
There's some higher, some lower, but the same amount of panels should pretty much generate the same amount of yearly electricity production. So you can be sure that with enough quotes that you're getting around the right average of yearly production with the same amount of panels. Obviously, there are different ways to connect your system, and there's more laborious ways that I'm going to talk about. So you got to make sure those components are in there too, because some systems come with more components and more labor, and they should cost more. All right. Last, shows you only one quote and doesn't give you any options for equipment to refuse or revise quotes based off of the components you want your system to have. This is a scenario in which you have a really good quote, and it might not have everything you want, but it has most of what you want. And then you have another quote that has everything you want, and you're wondering if they could match the price. So sometimes, or at least I've been through the install, like, oh yeah, I can match that, or I don't know, I have to see. And some are like, nah, I'm not going to do that. And the reason I'm not going to do that is because that particular installer has a system to sell you in mind, because it's the fastest thing he or she could put up there. And the more systems they get done, the more paydays they have. So to take out that time with your system is not going to help them make money. So they'd rather just move on to the next person that's willing to accept their cookie cutter system that doesn't have the components you absolutely want, even if the price was good. All right. So there are two ways to connect your solar system to your home. First one is known as a line tap, also known as a supply side tap or a line side tap. It is by far the cheapest and fastest way to connect your system, your solar system, to your electrical panel in your home. There's very little labor, so it should cost less than other things, and it is definitely going to give you your best bang for your buck because of the lower labor charges. However, you will not get to use your solar power plant when the utility grid is down and there's a power outage. So I talked about this scenario. This is the way my first system was designed. It was the way the state required it to be designed at the time, because I was not going to include a battery in the system. You do not have to do this. It is definitely the cheapest way to go, but you don't have to do this. But if you don't care about storing energy, because, well, technically you don't have to, it's a perfectly viable way to make all your electricity for the year, then you can definitely go this way and save some money. The next system is known as a backfeed, also known as a load side or backfed breaker. This is more expensive, more laborious, requires additional safety components, the automatic transfer switch I talked about before. With this system, you will have the ability to have power when the utility grid is down during a power outage. So if you don't want to buy a battery, that is something that you can do and still get the power from your panels. Now, I'm going to tell you that this is a very limited application. So in a power outage, if and only if the sun is up and you have a backfed system with an automatic transfer switch, that transfer switch can be used to apply that solar power to your home and still protect utility grid workers. And that's something that, is legal and to code and is safe. So, but when I talk about limited, this is what I mean. So your solar panels could be producing 15,000 watts in the middle of the sun. They could also be producing 5,000 watts or less because there's clouds over them. But there is limited power, and that power should be enough to charge your phones. It can run your Wi-Fi router so you can have internet, and it should be able to run some of your refrigeration as well. This might not be enough for you, and in all reality, enough clouds could shut that down. But if you want the ability to use the power from the sun when you have it, that option as of 2021, which is known as sunlight backup, is now available to you. All right. The backfeed system can also be used with a battery, solar power, or a generator, or any combination of the three. This is also new in 2021. It did not exist. There wasn't any particular device that could connect all these things together and use them in a smart way. And believe me, there is a lot of engineering and a lot of smart about it that allows this to happen. So my particular system can use sunlight to back up. It can use my battery. And if I have a string of cloudy days, I might connect a generator that I can integrate. There's additional prices with integrating each one of these things. So everything you add has a cost. Luckily, that cost for me is below my break-even point, and I'm still saving, again, $61 a month over paying for an electric bill. But case in point, if my power is out for an extended period of time and the sun goes down, my battery can kick on. It will run my house all night long. And then in the morning, when the sun comes back up, my system knows to switch back to solar. When it's making enough electricity to both power my house and charge the battery, it will do just that. It'll power my house and charge the battery at the same time, so my battery is ready to go for the next night if the power outage were to continue. Granted, a string of cloudy days could mess that up because there wouldn't be enough power during the day. The other thing I forgot to mention the system can do is if the sun's out and there's a cloud that goes by and I'm running lots of things in my house, the system knows to pull that extra power from the battery to combine it with the sunlight to make sure that I don't have to go without any of those devices when a cloud goes over. That's a pretty neat thing, and it's definitely going to provide you with the best experience. Again, it has an additional price to it. All right, finally, you will have the ability to work on both your electrical and solar systems and can make additions to your system in the future without having to call your electric utility to come pull the meter. All right, so that nomenclature, pull the meter, people don't realize that your electric meter is actually like a big switch that connects the grid to your home. And if you pull it out, there is no connection, which means there's no electrification, which means it's safe to work on things. If your solar wires are connected directly to those same wires after the meter, then you need to have someone come out to your house to pull that meter so that it's safe to work on it. If you have a backfed set up, and I really think people that know the term pull the meter are going to know that it will be safe to work on your solar system or any of the electrical components in your house because you have local control over all of those things to make sure nothing's electrified when you go to work on it. I am an avid DIYer and I'd like to do my own things, and I don't want to have to call the utility company to come out and turn me off by pulling the meter. All right, so there are two major types of solar systems. I am going to show you examples of both. One is my friend's, one is my own. So the first type is the inverter-based, as I like to call it, one big inverter. So one big device typically mounted on the side of your house converts solar electricity, also known as direct current, to electricity that your house can use, also known as alternating current. This one big inverter is sized to the exact amount of panels that your house needs to power itself. So there is no way to expand the system without replacing this big expensive component. So it is really not future-proof. So installation is cheaper because there's less labor needed. There are literally less components needed when you use this big inverter-based system. Again, however, you have to stick with the inverter that works for the exact number of panels. If you want to add panels in the future because you have new electrical needs, whether you're buying an electric vehicle or a hybrid, or if you have more kids and you're using more power, then that option isn't available to you without paying big money to replace this expensive big inverter. So that's important. But the upfront cost is cheaper and it'll definitely give you the best bang for your buck, especially if there aren't a lot of things that are changing about your household. I'm going to be willing to bet that there will be in the upcoming years, but it definitely will still make all of your electricity for a cheaper price. All right. Second type of system is a micro inverter based system. So one inverter for each panel. This is the system I have and I will show you. So one small inverter is hidden underneath each panel. Each inverter converts direct current to alternating current at each panel. And there is really no other way to set this up. They're always tucked neatly under each panel. It keeps them out of the heat. It makes them the most efficient, and they're pretty neat. So it's more expensive to do the initial install because there is more labor included. Additional equipment like a combiner box is needed, But each microinverter is inexpensive and easily replaceable because they are plug and play. When I say plug and play, I literally mean there's a connector that you plug in, twist nice and tight to make it waterproof, and then voila, that's it. You've connected a new microinverter. The system size is not limited and can be increased at any time without replacing components. That's why the system's future-proof. Nothing needs to be replaced. All that has to happen is you need to buy a microinverter, buy a panel, buy racking for those panels. There isn't, the heart of the system doesn't have to be replaced. You're literally just going to add to it, and it is relatively inexpensive. Each microinverter is roughly $200. Each panel is roughly $400, like $1 per watt. And that's at cost. Now, to have it installed is going to be more like $250, $3 per watt. But my point is the components themselves are much cheaper, and it is feasible to say you're going to add on to this system easily in the future should you need to. All right. Last thing, you have real control and monitoring of each panel's production because each microinverter reports to you more production on cloudy days. I did leave this out up there because I want to talk about this point together. With an inverter, big inverter-based system, there's less control and reporting at the panel level, and there's less production on cloudy days. This is because inverter-based systems are connected in what's known as direct current strings. They're much like Christmas lights. If a cloud goes over a string, the system has a hard time telling or using just one panel from that string. It kind of shuts the whole thing down. They've included optimizers on every panel to try to help with that, but it's never going to be quite as good or give you as much information as actually having a readout via Wi-Fi or wires from the microinverter under each panel. That means when a cloud goes over one panel, more panels stay on and your production is higher on a cloudy and rainy days with a microinverter-based system. If there's literally snow on one panel, it's not going to have the same production losses as you would have with an inverter-based system. All right, so this is the end of my slideshow and the end of my introduction. Please stay with me so that I can show you everything that I just talked about with both my friend's system and my own system. I thank you for your time, and please enjoy the rest of the video. Please.
Okay, so the purpose of this video is to show you the difference between the outside of my house and the outside of my friend's house. As you can see, you can't see anything from over here. We're going to look a little closer. I'm going to come up to my meter and my disconnect. So obviously this is my net meter. This allows me to both export electricity and import electricity and count it. And this is my disconnect. As you can see, there's no big box on the outside of my house. It's just this disconnect. But if you look a little closer, under here there is a pipe, and you're not going to see it for a while, for another 40 feet or so. Till it pops out right here under my house, then goes up the gutter nice and clean, tucks under the gutter right there, the elbow. I'm going to move around to the back of the house. Nice bright sun. See right there where it bends around the gutter, then goes into my attic. That then goes through my attic, pops out under a solar array, the biggest one, makes that nice gentle bend over top of the roof and then around my gutter yet again. Tucks around in nice and neat under that window and goes to this array. Under this array, it does pop through again into my garage to get to the array on the other side. You barely see the array over there, and shortly the other rays will come into view. Here they are. So this is the garage roof array. Again, no conduit whatsoever, which is my favorite. And then you'll see the main roof array, a little bit of conduit behind the chimney. So underneath each of these solar panels is a microinverter, and they output alternating current. So with that microinverter under each panel, they output alternating current, or AC, which is exactly what your house uses. So there is no further conversion necessary, unlike my friend's house where all the panels come together and go to that big inverter on the side of his house. And that is where direct current from the solar panels becomes alternating current that the house can use. So it's a very big difference in delivery. I do like not seeing the big boxes on the outside of my house, but there are ways to kind of corrupt things, even with microinverters, and mount a bunch of boxes on the outside of your house, regardless of whether or not you have them. But we'll stick to my system and my friend's system because they're both viable and very clean ways of doing a very, very good install. So to compare and contrast, here is my friend's inverter-based system, one big inverter, to convert direct current from the solar panels to alternating current that the house can use. Here is his net meter. Now we're going to follow the beautiful conduit that the installer did all the way up to his gutter. It's tucked in nice and neat behind the gutters, you could barely see it, over his soffit, and then tucks neatly under the solar panels. I'm going to take you inside my friend's house to his main electrical panel. After we remove the cover, we're going to notice these two wires, the red and the black, connected to two big black clamps. So the two big black clamps pictured here are the line taps. This is the most common way to connect solar to your home. So the red and the black wires that connect to the line taps are the solar wires coming directly from the inverter that we saw located outside just on the other side of this wall. So also attached to those clamps or running directly through those clamps are the utility grid wires. They're the big black thick wires, and obviously they are labeled in yellow in this photograph. Oversimplify things just a little bit. If there is no power running through these big thick black wires or utility grid lines, then there is no way for power to get from your solar system, from the red and the black wire, to your house, because the power going through the lines is exactly what makes the connection between solar and your home. You may have already guessed from that explanation that if there is no power coming from the utility grid, in other words, there's a power outage, then there is no way to make that connection and allow solar to flow into your home when the power is out. So while this is the cheapest way and the fastest way for a solar installer to connect solar to your home, it is also the way in which you cannot get power from your solar panels during the day when the sun is up, even though your solar panels are producing when your power is out. So I'm now going to call your attention to the main breaker that is highlighted in blue and the house breakers that are highlighted in red, because the main breaker that you see there is the switch that stops the flow of the utility wires into your home so you can safely work on the red house breakers below them. So in the same way that the main breaker is the safety device that protects you or someone else that is working on your house to make sure they don't get electrocuted when they're performing work, the line taps themselves are the safety devices that protect the electrical workers when they are trying to restore power to your home. Because if they didn't work, then solar power during the day would flow directly into their wires and will electrocute them even when the power was out. So here we are downstairs in my home at my main electrical panel. This is going to be the example of the back-fed system. So it's not a line tap, it is a back-fed system with a back-fed breaker. The back-fed breaker on my system is this 90 amp breaker. It is the way in which solar electricity enters my main electrical panel. You will see that I also have a main breaker. But the problem with this setup is that there is additional equipment needed. As you may have guessed from the previous video, the equipment needed is safety equipment that is missing to protect the utility grid workers. What is missing? Well, just to remind you, this 90 amp breaker is where the electricity from the solar system is coming into my main panel. And also to remind you that this main breaker is the last stop before that electricity would be back-fed into the utility grid. The utility and my township and the state and the National Electric Code is not going to trust that I'm going to be here to turn off this breaker when the first utility worker starts to work on a power outage, should there be one. The end result is that circuit is open from the 90 amp breaker
through my main breaker and back into the utility wires. And that is dangerous. So we need another device. That device is expensive, but it's what makes back feeding energy from a solar system possible. That device here is my automatic transfer switch. This is a smart automatic transfer switch. It controls the flow of power from my solar system. So the solar power actually comes in through this combiner box. This is where my breakers are from all the microinverters on my roof. And then it goes to this box first. Therefore, when the power goes out, this device will sense it and it will cut off the flow of power to this 90 amp breaker, and it will only allow power to flow from my automatic transfer switch into this secondary critical loads box that includes all of my 120 breakers. This is every outlet and light in my home. It works the fan in my heater, and I really don't go without much when all of this stuff kicks on. So when do all of these things kick on when there's a power outage? Well, the answer is it kicks on automatically and instantaneously. Again, there's a power outage and my automatic transfer switch senses that power outage. It cuts the flow off from this 90 amp breaker here so that it can't feed power up through my main breaker and then out into the electric grid. And it diverts power to this box that has almost everything I need in my home to run. My Wi-Fi, refrigeration, you name it, is all on this. There's more than enough power to do so. And it does so automatically and instantaneously as soon as this smart switch senses a loss of grid power. If you're wondering where it's getting its electricity from, when the power is out from the utility grid, it is pulling that electricity from my solar panels that come in through the combiner box. It is able to pull electricity from my battery. It can do it both at the same time if there's a cloud that goes by, so that it makes sure there's enough power to run everything in this box. Just in case there's not enough instantaneous power coming from the sun, it will back feed or fill that power with power from the battery. The other thing it can do, which is pretty amazing, is that if there is enough power coming from the solar panels, and believe me, there will be on a nice day, it can both charge the battery and power the house at the exact same time, which means every night, if I run my battery out, let's say there is no electric grid power, I just want to go plain off grid. Every night, I will use all the power in my battery, at least most of it. And every morning when the sun comes up, it will both run everything in here and charge the battery so it's ready to go the next night. And I can do this pretty much forever if I want to remain off the grid or if I have a really long power outage. Gotta love this little thing here. One more point on automatic transfer switches. This is a future spoiler alert. There are cars out there like the Ford F-150 Lightning that are advertising that they can power your house for 3 days. What they don't tell you is something that doesn't come with their chargers that are considered bidirectional is an automatic transfer switch. So they're going to tell you that you're going to need to purchase one of these puppies anyway if you want to make use of bidirectional charging and you want to power your house from your car's battery. Yes, it's perfectly viable. Yes, you're going to need one of these. So if you are going to get an EV in the future with bidirectional charging, then you are going to need to purchase one of these in the future anyway. So you might as well just get it now.
All right, for those of you that would like the Cliff's Notes version or the quick version of seeing exactly what would be mounted on your house if you went with any of the 4 systems that I described earlier in the video, I want to show you these 4 slides. So the first one up here is the inverter-based line tap system. This is my friend's system. This is the best bang for your buck. It will make all the electricity that your house needs to make throughout the year. You cannot make any additions without changing that big old inverter. Just to let you know, that big old inverter that's outside my friend's house can be mounted in his basement just like his panel is. But it is waterproof and most installers choose to put it out there, but you can always ask to have it mounted inside. I would recommend it. It protects the longevity. But again, you cannot make additions to it. No more solar panels if you have increasing needs like for your EV or anything else.
You will have no power during an outage. Remember that. With this setup, this line tap system, you have no power during a power outage. So even though the sun's up, your solar panels are making electricity, you can't use them if the rest of your neighborhood is out. Okay, this is a micro inverter based line tap system. It's not the cheapest, but you can still make additions to it because it is combiner box here and how all the micro inverters work. As you can see, all that's outside my house there is my meter and my disconnect. It's required by law. So this box is waterproof, can be mounted outside. I prefer to mount it inside, and my installer was nice enough to do it for me. This is my friend's box, but just to show you, these components and microinverter based systems can be connected with a line tap. You will not have power when the power is out, okay? So just keep that in mind. Anything connected in this fashion will not have power when the power is out, but at least it is a little bit more future-proof, and if you want to add solar panels in the future, it is relatively cheap to do so. So this is one of the reasons I would recommend this if you don't want to spend a ton of money, but you still want to have the ability to add panels in the future. Okay, this is a microinverter-based back-fed system. You can absolutely make additions to this system because, again, there's your combiner box over there in the corner. You will have limited power during an outage, but only when the sun is up. So there's no battery here, so there's nothing to store power at night. But if you have an automatic transfer switch and you have the combiner box from the microinverter systems, then that means you can add some power. There's a critical loads panel here, so you can power up some of the circuits in here just from the sunlight. But again, you will only have limited power during an outage when the sun is up, and that's it. It's going to cost more money. You can make additions. If you go for this and you want to add a battery in the future, you can add it to the automatic transfer switch because you already have the infrastructure needed. If you want to add a generator to this, so only use the sun when the sun is up and a generator at night without purchasing a battery, this will work for that too because it is a smart transfer switch. So just to let you know, if you just want to start with this and you don't want to get that 30% tax credit of adding a battery because you don't want to spend the extra money, but maybe you want to do something in the future, at least you have all the infrastructure necessary. So I'm going to go on to the next slide and my system. So this is my system in its full breadth. So this is a microinverter-based back-fed system with battery storage. All of the same components in the last picture. This is all that's outside my house. As you can see, this system takes up a lot of space on my basement wall. It's beautiful. It's tucked in great. The installer did a phenomenal job. Everything is exactly where I wanted it, which is great. But 1, 2, 3 boxes can all be mounted outside. They are all waterproof. So your automatic transfer switch, your combiner box, and your battery are all waterproof. So if you don't have the space, no big deal. It can be mounted outside. I would not recommend it. There's more longevity to mounting things indoors. But with this system, you can make additions. You can add a generator. You can add more panels. You can add more batteries if you want. You will have power during an outage day or night. Battery at night, sunlight during the day, both the sunlight and the battery during the day if for some reason it's a little bit cloudy. And you can use that battery every night and it will recharge itself with this system. And the other thing you do is add a generator if you would like because you have the automatic transfer switch or potentially battery storage from your EV in the not too distant future. So all of these options are available to you and all that's outside my house is this. And even though these 1, 2, 3 are waterproof, but please remember, every component you see here has an additional cost. So while I'm still saving, I told you $60 a month, you don't necessarily have to spend all of this money and still make all of the power you need. So the cheapest system that I showed you will still make all the power you need. So I like my future-proof system. I like still being able to save $60 a month. I could have saved $120, but this is what I chose to go with. One quick note about my particular system and keeping all of your equipment indoors out of the elements for longevity. There is one other bonus. So my system here, everything is inside on one wall of my basement. Everything you can see is in this metal pipe. The same goes for the entire circuit related to my solar panels outside.
If you saw my video of the outside of my home, what you're going to see is that the wires that run to my solar system are completely encased in metal conduit. That's just a code. That's how you have to do it. But that also means that if you're a security nut or you're really afraid of that Armageddon scenario, that I have the most secure power grid that you could possibly have on premises, and you have to gain access to my home in order to access that. Sure, you can go outside and you can cut my service wire that's not in a metal pipe, and that's just cutting the wires to the power grid. That is not cutting the feed to my solar panels that are hidden in this metal pipe. That's not cutting anything to my battery. So by having all this inside in my house, right here, can make its own grid. And that grid is not available to anyone that hasn't gained access to my home. So come Armageddon, come Civil War, my grid's inside. Thank you everyone for your time and attention. Just in case you forgot over this long video, my name is Adam Pizzo. This is my very first video. I hope to make some shorter ones in the future. I also hope to reveal the name of my installer in the not too distant future, especially if you're located somewhere around me here in New Jersey. I can't wait to read your comments. I can't wait to answer your questions. But most importantly, I do want you to go solar your way, and I will be here to help you do just that.